So if you look at your sheet that says sex addiction criteria, I know that you can read it, but I'm going to go through each one. So recurrent failure to resist sexual impulses, to engage in specific sexual behavior. So a lot of times people come in and we're not their first stop. They have tried to stop the behavior. They've thrown away the porno. They've thrown away all the phone numbers to the escorts. They've, vowed that they are never, ever going to do this behavior again, only to find themselves hijacked, and back in the game. All right? So by the time people come in, they have had very many tries at trying to stop, but not able to stay stopped. The second one is frequently engaging in those behaviors to a greater extent or over a longer period of time than intended. So when you're doing a history, so maybe the first time this kind of, bell went off in their brains was when they were 9 years old, and Bobby or Susie had a Playboy magazine. And maybe that'd be interesting to any 9, 10-year-old, like, but for Danny, it was like, wow. And so Danny went on a pursuit. And by the time Danny was 14 or 15 years, he had a stack of magazines hidden. And by the time he got a little bit older, the internet age had come out, and he realized, I have access to this 24/7. And by the time he got a little older and met Julie, the love of his life, he had this terrible secret that he was so ashamed of that he couldn't share. But he thought that finding the love of his life would take care of this. And right into the marriage, loves his wife dearly and can't understand why he's calling escorts and running up the visa bill on a card that she doesn't know about. So the behavior progresses. Persistent desire or unsuccessful efforts to stop, reduce, or control those behaviors. So a lot of people, this is the classic kind of thing where I'm not going to drink brown liquor. I'm only going to drink white wine, And before you know it, if brown liquor was your thing, after a few white wines, what are you going to reach for the brown liquor? Okay? In this case, it's like, well, I am not going to masturbate anymore. I'm just going to watch porn. But the masturbation and the porn go together as a package deal, so if you start that up again, eventually you're going to be back on that track. 4 says inordinate amounts of time spent in obtaining sex, being sexual, or recovering from sexual experiences. So, what is that thing where Eric alluded to a little bit, and so did Steve. Well, you start off where you live to drink, and then it ends up being you drink to live. And so this is what happens with the sexual addiction. Everything is centered around the addictive behavior. How you make appointments, what you say yes to, what you say no to, where you go, where you don't go. Everything becomes centered around your addiction. Preoccupation with sexual behavior or preparatory activities. And what we talk about here is the ritual. So the ritual that kind of leads to the acting out behavior is sometimes so much more powerful than the acting out behavior. The acting out behavior is almost anticlimactic. So if the ritual is I start to cruise around the park. I'm a gay male, for example, and I start to cruise around the park just to see what guys are out there kind of running. And, my heart starts to race a little bit. I'm starting to feel kind of all foggy in the brain. Everything else is kind of turned, silent. I am super focused on this one thing. And I am feeling it. Finally, I find somebody that I might be able to approach. The deal goes down well, and it's almost like, okay. So it's important to understand what people's rituals are. It's really important, because if they can stop the behavior before they get to the ritual, then they may not have to act out. But they have to understand their ritual, because sometimes it's so unconscious, it's just part of what they do, that they don't understand that at that point, once you get to this certain point in your ritual, there's almost nothing left to do but act out. Frequent engaging in the behavior when expected to fulfill occupational, academic, domestic, or social obligations. Okay, so very brilliant law student that we worked with in our counseling practice, and she was, I mean, just brilliant, and ended up having to leave law school because she couldn't get anything done, because she had so much anxiety. And she didn't know how brilliant she was. And the only way to relieve that anxiety for her was acting out sexually. And so, you know, she had to leave law school. For a lot of people, they've lost jobs. They know that where they go is being monitored, but their need to fulfill that craving becomes greater than the reality that you could lose your job. And then the last one, continuation of the behavior despite knowledge of having a persistent or recurrent social, financial, psychological, or physical problem that is caused or exacerbated by the behavior.